I'm here with Shirley Gorry, who's agreed to come and talk to us today about what it's like to be a mother of a child with diabetes. Hi, Shirley.
Hello.
Right, it'd be great if you could start by just giving us some details of how your son came to be diagnosed and what kind of led to you getting that diagnosis.
He was 7 when he was diagnosed.
Okay.
He'd been generally unwell for a couple of weeks, and I don't know, my husband took him off to the doctors, and when I was leaving, I said, check him for diabetes. Don't know why. There was no rhyme or reason for me to do that. And at 12:30 that day, he'd been admitted to hospital, and they started his treatment. And the consultant seemed to think a virus had knocked out his pancreas,
Right.
which had led to his diabetic condition. So it was surreal. It really was surreal getting that telephone call at work. And I was actually teaching, and I walked back into the classroom, and they went, "What are you doing, miss?" And I said, "I've got to go. My son's in hospital." And it's every parent's nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
That your child, A, is in hospital, and B, actually has developed a lifelong condition.
Were there any other physical signs leading up to that made you think it might be diabetes, or gave you any
It was
clues?
just generally that he was lethargic.
Right.
He'd always leapt out of bed in the morning and was constantly on the go. And for about 2 weeks, he'd generally just slowed down.
Okay.
And he'd been out for the day on the Saturday, and it totally exhausted him, which wasn't like him at all.
Right.
And you think, what have I done? Why has this happened? And then the hospital were great.
So was it explained fully to you when you were admitted the first time of exactly what the condition was and what it would mean for you?
Yes, and basically that if you managed it correctly,
Yeah.
you'd never see inside, never be in a hospital bed again.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, he was diagnosed at 7. He's 23, and he has never ever been hospitalised for diabetes since then.
Yeah. And how did you deal with the day-to-day management of that diabetes? And did that change as he got older?
In some respects, it was quite easy because it was quite a solid routine.
Right.
He got up in the morning, he checked his blood, he had his breakfast, he had a mid-morning snack, he checked his blood at lunchtime, he had lunch, he came in, he had a mid-afternoon snack, he had checked his blood at dinner, and then supper, and went to bed. And it was quite rigid.
Okay.
And you get some quite useful information sheets about you have to start counting carbohydrates, and they count them in units.
Yeah. And
it used to be very quaintly called exchanges. You used to have 10 exchanges for so much insulin, and a potato, let's say, was 10 exchanges, or 2 rich tea biscuits was 10 exchanges.
Right.
Don't quote me on that because it would have changed. Then when he was about 15, with the changes to the types of insulin and the research that they'd done, they went on to a much freer system, which for a 15-year-old was good.
Right.
But initially it was too free.
Okay.
After the rigidness of the set 5 meals in effect a day and regular blood testing and everything, he moved to a system where he had a long-acting insulin injection in the morning, and then whenever he had a meal, he would have sufficient insulin to cover the carbohydrates in that meal.
Okay.
And as I say, it's quite interesting because he was diagnosed at 7, and 7 to 10 were not without. It was routine.
Yeah.
And he just built it into his daily routine. Then we had the horrifying years, and then, ironically, he went off to America when he was 18, and he grew up in every which way.
Okay, and how did he take the diagnosis? Do you think he understood? How old was he at the time?
7. He was 7.
So do you think he understood exactly what was going on?
I don't know. I don't think he did. I don't think any 7-year-old can understand. However, I don't know whether I ought to say this. I don't think at 7 a child understands the seriousness of it and the longevity of it.
Right.
I think all they need to know, or all they need to learn at that point, is that there are routines and there are things that they can do that will make them feel better.
Yeah. So would you say that focusing on the day-to-day management of diabetes is a very good way of getting through it, particularly in those early years? Just focus on your routine for that day.
Yeah, and I think it's a routine that is easy to stick to, and it was easy to be established, and the benefits were that, you know, he no longer felt lethargic, he was up and about doing. I mean, he has never, and we have never used diabetes as a reason or an excuse for him not to do something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think between 7 and 11, he was on a very established routine, and he did it as a matter of course, as you would expect a child who's told to do something would do it.
Would do, yeah. Did you find there was any difference in his management of it from primary school to secondary school and during that period of time?
I think as a mother of a diabetic son, if you talk to any mother of a diabetic son, they would say that the ages of 12 to 16 were surreal, in the fact that they suddenly go into denial about it.
Right.
And they don't want to have it anymore. And it's almost like this 7-year itch, where they're just not going to play this game. And they're no different to anybody else. And it's all about growing up. And they're no different to anybody else. They're normal, like normal people. They're not diabetics. And it's a phase they go through. Primary school was a dream. You know, primary school, he would walk into school with his hypo box containing his snack and his kind of pop. Secondary school, I think he took it in once. And I think it remained in the school office, because I don't think he would ever have used it in secondary school. We lived 10 minutes away from school, and if he'd have struggled to get home to use it, because he didn't want anybody to know that he was diabetic.
What would you say, as a parent, was the most daunting aspect of your son's diagnosis? Was it the day-to-day management of the diabetes, or the longevity of the illness, looking ahead to that? What affected you the most?
It's a lifelong condition, and I think you don't want it to stop them doing or being whatever it is they want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that I would say is the worst. I think that's the worst thing about it, as being a parent, is the fact that your child has got something, or has developed something, that quite simply you wish they'd never had got. I don't know. It's difficult to explain it.
Does he wear anything that would dictate to other people?
He even went off travelling, and I wanted to get him the old SOS tag, and he wouldn't have it.
If you could give one message now to a parent out there that might be going through something similar, what would that be?
I think the day-to-day routine is manageable. And in fact, when they're younger, I think it's relatively simple.
Okay.
But I think the most daunting thing about it is the fact that you, as a parent, you think, what am I going to do? Or how can I support